Good morning. It's the 4th of December, and I absolutely cannot wait for tonight. England play Senegal in the last 16 of the World Cup, and for once it falls at a time for me in my diary where I can actually enjoy it and watch it. And I'm going over to the neighbours, and they're doing chili dogs and mulled wine, which is a thing together. It will be tonight. I just am so excited. And I don't know, I think I'm feeling good about it. Are you? They've been looking sharp. Apart from the odd moment, I think we can be confident going into tonight. I do think, though, that plenty of prayers will be said today, no doubt, and not just by the fans. Have you noticed how many players seem to have a faith in God in this World Cup? If they're not whipping off their shirts to reveal a Bible verse, they are celebrating their goals like Marcus Rashford. Did you notice on Tuesday night, in the Wales game, after he scored, he kind of fell to his knees and he pointed up to heaven and held the pose? Well, Ben Wildman left St Nick's Church in Nottingham to work for a Christian organisation called Sports Friends, and he's joining you now. Morning, Ben.
Morning, Francis. Great to be here.
So it's interesting, isn't it? In a week when the census has shown a drop in the number of Christians, apparently, there are so many famous players who are pretty confident with their faith. Is that a surprise to you?
Yeah, I think, well, like you just said, there's many different cultures who express their faith differently. So some express it publicly, some express it maybe privately. We've seen, like you said, some teams praying before, clearly celebrating and thanking God. Like you said, in previous World Cups gone by, you've seen people who've got Bible verses or headbands on their head saying things like, I belong to Jesus, or the famous John 3:16, for God so loved the world
that he gave his one and only Son,
that whoever believes in him will not perish, but will have eternal life. But for England, in the England squad, you mentioned Marcus Rashford. There's also Bukayo Saka, who recently said that he holds on to God's promises. He actually reads the Bible day by day. And it was interesting to me, after he had that famous missed penalty in 2021, he actually spent time around different Christians who were reminding him that his identity is not in his performance, but is firmly in Christ. And so you're right, there's different people who express their faith publicly and maybe some privately as well in the field of sport.
It's interesting that about Bukayo Saka, because, that was heartbreaking. The penalty shootout, Italy, Euros finals. I mean, who wasn't praying at that point? And he, of all the people then that would have been like properly praying, it was part of his lifestyle to do that. He missed a penalty, and you said that he kind of took himself away, didn't he, from the public limelight to get back into his church, because that felt like it was a real help for him.
That's right. He completely came off the grid, and he wanted to be, faith's there in the good times, but it's also there in the bad times. And he says he holds on to God's promises, and in the bad and in the good. And obviously that was one of the first moments in his career. And him, like many others, believe that, God can use that for good and can be there even when the worst things happen in life.
Yeah. It's interesting, this sort of praying before the match business. Like the Brazilian team, the whole of the team apparently get together and pray. I think it's a very Catholic nation, isn't it, Brazil? But what in a way are they praying for? Because, as we saw, Saka missed that penalty. It's not the team with the most people in it that pray, that win. How does it all stack up? What are they praying about?
Yeah, well, the Brazilian documentary on Amazon, I think they prayed the Lord's Prayer. I watched it and all that, and it's and they pray the Lord's Prayer before they get in the Brazilian team. And I always find this interesting because I work, like you said, for an organisation called Sports Friends International, and we work in 18 countries, and we train coaches in those 18 countries. Now, this business about praying before matches is a really interesting topic, because imagine if two teams are praying, which team's going to win? So often we like to try and teach people to try and train them to ask them to pray that they'll glorify God in the way that they play, and they thank God for the ability to play sport, and maybe try and stay away from praying to win, because that gets a little bit messy, doesn't it, when it comes into that theologically and everything. But praying for not to get hit, and just praying to glorify God, like I said, through try and teach our coaches, to try and teach young people in the countries that we work in.
Yes, I think if you do believe in a God who made people, then I suppose it would make sense that the talents that you've got, those innate abilities, they would have come from him, if that's what you believe. So you can kind of ask him to help you do that really well. But I suppose it's like going into a job interview, isn't it, and saying, please let me get this job, which of course we all do, because I guess it's natural. But I suppose what we're really saying is, help me do my best and be who I've been made to be. It's that mentality, isn't it? I suppose giving it back to the person who you believe it all belongs to.
That's right, absolutely. We say that, like, God's given us all our gifts and talents and abilities, and the ability to play sport, and we want to thank him for that as well. So that's a good thing we like to teach, and that's why with our organisation, like I say, we do a lot of teaching and training, and things like this is like with praying and loads of other things when it comes to faith and football and faith and sport. We love to have these teachable moments where we can teach some of these really important things, and have these conversations like we're having now with many young people. We actually work with 12,000 coaches and 250,000 young people. So we love teaching and having these conversations around the world.
Great. Yeah, really good. All right, before you go, how are you going to watch the match tonight? I'm in the neighbour's house. We've got chili dogs and mulled wine. What about you?
Yeah, so I am watching it with my wife and my dog. I was out on Tuesday watching the game with my friends out and about. So I'm watching it at home because I think it's going to be a little bit harder than the African Cup of Nations champions, so the AFCON champion. So it's going to be a tough game, and it's certainly not a given. So the African champions are going to be a tough team. So I'm looking forward to watching it at home, and hopefully England can get the win.
And the score will be?
I'm going to go England 2, Senegal 1.
Oh, come on. All right, thank you, Ben. It's really great to have you on the show. Ben Wildman spent a lot of time in Nottingham at St Nick's, now works for Sports Friends. It's BBC Radio Nottingham, 26 minutes after 8.